Welcome to On the Line Public Interest News. I'm your host, Rich-Gehlhausen. On the Line Public Interest News presents a variety of subjects of worldwide public interest, from the humorous and entertaining to some of the most serious issues confronting people in varying parts of the world today. From basic health needs such as food, water, and medicine to international crime. We'll conduct interviews with people from around the world who are committed to confronting and mitigating the various issues vital to our global audience. And we'll present the information in a compelling, educational, objective, and non-ideological manner. On the Line Public Interest News can be heard on partnering radio broadcast stations, including international radio, digital, HD, and satellite radio, as well as internet radio, such as Spreaker, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, and SoundCloud. And you'll find links to our programs on social media such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. To learn more about On the Line Public Interest News, please visit us online at www.on-the-line.webs.com. Now, our topic for the first part of today's program is the interesting and somewhat unlikely story of Big League Chew bubblegum. And with us to explain it all is the inventor of Big League Chew bubblegum, Rob Nelson. And Big League Chew bubblegum is a brand of bubblegum that is shredded and packaged in an aluminum pouch. Created by Portland Mavericks left-handed pitcher Rob Nelson and pitched to the Wrigley Company by the former New York Yankee All-Star Jim Bouton, who was also a Portland Maverick teammate of Nelson's, thought as a fun alternative to chewing tobacco. Big League Chew bubblegum sold over 18 million pouches in its first year. Has sold over 600 million pouches of gum since 1980. Currently, it's manufactured in the United States by the Ford Gum and Machine Company in Akron, New York, where they produce 100,000 pouches a day. Like I said, with us to explain it all is inventor Rob Nelson. Hello, Rob, and welcome to today's On the Line radio program.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
I sure appreciate your appearing on our program today. Got to tell you, Rob, I got all of that information right from Wikipedia, and I suspect that it might be a little old information. I suspect that you folks have sold well over 600 million pouches of gum since 1980. But explain it all to us. How did it start?
It was the most unlikely. It's just it's preposterous, really. I was a pretty good college ball player in upstate New York. I pitched at Cornell. Went on after that to do some graduate school work to get a teaching degree. My first job was teaching overseas in Cape Town, South Africa, where I pitched on the weekends. I read an article about the Portland Mavericks while I was playing ball in South Africa. It was an unusual team run and owned by a fellow named Bing Russell, who was the deputy sheriff on the Bonanza Tea back in the 60s. A delightful guy and a real innovator. Anybody could try out for that team. I'd had a couple of good seasons in Cape Town, so I went from South Africa to teaching in my neighborhood where I grew up, and then headed to Portland, Oregon to try out for the team, and that was 40 years ago, 1975.
Mm-hmm. You know,
then
the story.
What happens? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you. Please, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was that the competition between the Ivy League, where I pitched in college, and the Northwest League, a single-A baseball league, was chasmic. I mean, it was just, there was a big divide between good college hitters and good minor league baseball hitters. So I didn't make the team until later in the season, but I stuck around. I threw batting practice for $10 a day. I made a proposal to Bing Russell that he loved, and I ran a school called the Little Mavericks Baseball School. It was because of that baseball day camp that I was able to survive in the great city of Portland. I finally made the team, stayed there for actually 3 summers, and I hadn't won a game until August of 1977, when I finally managed to get 1 win as a professional baseball player. But it was that same summer I was sitting in the bullpen with Jim Bouton. We were looking at teammates who were chewing and spitting tobacco for distance, for accuracy, for artistic effect. It was really repulsive. And Jim asked me if I had ever tried chewing tobacco. And my experience, I tried it once. It never made sense to me. It made me ill. and I never did it again. And I said I've always been, before then and afterwards, a big fan of chewing bubble gum. So fast forward an inning or two later, I said to Jim, I've had an idea for some time now to shred bubble gum so we could look cool reaching into a pouch and getting these shreds of gum, pink shreds, and blowing bubbles, and then we wouldn't make ourselves ill. And Jim loved the idea. His eyes got as big as baseballs, and he said, Rob, I love that idea. I think I could sell that for you. What would you call it? And as kind of a throwaway line, I said, I don't know, probably something like Big League Chew. So the idea was, as Jim says, a lightning bolt in a pouch.
Mm-hmm. So once you came up with the
Jim Bowden,
yeah.
Once we came up with the idea, Jim Bowden said, Rob, we need to get some samples made, which I did. I found an article I'd read in People magazine and made bubblegum from this company out of Arlington, Texas, and sent it off to Jim, who was back on the East Coast. I had remained in Portland, and he went out peddling shredded gum in a pouch to any company that would listen, and quite frankly, to a lot of companies, as it turned out, who wouldn't listen. But we were lucky. We got a small division of Wrigley called Amaral Products, who loved the idea, and in 1980 went into production.
I want to back up just a little bit because once you've had the idea for a while, you discuss it with Jim Bouton, then you guys decide, let's go ahead and try this. But are you saying that you made your own bubble gum in your kitchen, or how'd you go about that?
Well, actually, I made the bubble gum in the kitchen of our bat boy, Todd Field, who is a pretty prominent writer, director in Hollywood now. But at the time, he was our 15-year-old bat boy, and his mom had plates and pots and pans, which I didn't have in my apartment. So we made the gum in Southeast Portland on February 6, 1979. And I remember that day because I found out a few years later that the 6th of February happened to be Babe Ruth's birthday. So it was a good omen from day one.
Definitely. What I find so fascinating, we actually have two unlikely stories here. Like you and I discussed this, quintessential American stories. Only in America could these sorts of things happen. The story of the Portland Mavericks itself, and then the story of Big League Chew bubblegum. You couldn't really have one without the other.
I've said it many times that Big League Chew never would have happened had Bing Russell not had the idea of being an independent team within organized baseball. There's a terrific documentary that premiered at Sundance in 2014 about the Portland Mavericks. You can get it on Netflix. It's called The Battle. And when you see that documentary, it's a little over an hour long, you can see the spirit of Bing Russell, that anything was possible in Bing's world. And we had 300 guys trying out. That was an only in America story. And the fact that he allowed me to be a part of that team for 3 seasons when it was obvious that I was not up to standard was just an absolutely gracious thing. And I'm thankful to Bing Russell every day for his sense of creativity and giving everybody an opportunity. And then for me to be sitting in a bullpen with a former New York Yankee who'd pitched in 2 World Series. He was a Major League All-Star. He not only was a creative guy, but he had $10,000 and he put up the seed money. Jim always laughs and said Rob had the inspiration, but Jim himself was the perspiration. And that was a perfect mix, in terms of being the dreamy philosophy major with the hard-nosed businessman, writer, Major League ball player in Jim Bouton. It was a perfect convergence. I'm as grateful to Jim Bouton as I am certainly to Bing Russell.
Mm-hmm. One of the things you'd asked me to do when you and I were talking a few days ago leading up to our interview was that you asked me to watch the documentary on Netflix, Battered Bastards of Baseball. What an incredible story that is. And we may do another show just about the Portland Mavericks. But as this began to develop,
Go ahead.
No, you please. Go ahead.
I was going to say there would be no shortage of stories about the Battered Bastards. As a matter of fact, Todd Field, the Bat Boy, now writer and director, has recently signed an agreement with Justin Lin, most recently of Furious 7, to write the script for the major motion picture about the Portland Mavericks. So lots of exciting things happening 40 years after the team left town.
Well, for a team that was only in existence for 5 years, they created some huge waves in baseball. I just think it's an incredible story. But I want to ask you, let's talk about your background somewhat. Like, how did you wind up to be the kind of guy you are? What kind of kid were you growing up? I mean, did you have exposure to baseball, Major League Baseball, as a kid growing up? I mean, what was that like?
You know, I grew up on Long Island in a great little town, Massapequa, New York. My dad was a New York City cop. I have two older brothers. Her mom was a mom. It was a very post-World War II, 50s and 60s kind of experience, and we played baseball all the time. We also played basketball, football, and everything else, but I was particularly enamored with the game of baseball. I think because I was left-handed. Whitey Ford was the big, blonde, left-handed pitcher for the New York Yankees, and I was a towhead lefty too, so I had those big league dreams, and I just played the game a lot and loved the game a lot. My big brother Harry played a few years of minor league ball with the New York Yankee organization. He taught me just about everything I know, and what he didn't teach me, my dad did. As luck would have it, I was on some great Little League teams. I was on the 1964 Senior Little League team that won the World Series in Louisville, Kentucky. That first road trip, first plane trip to go down to Kentucky to play Monterrey, Mexico, and Houston, Texas, and a team from Iowa, it just really got me hooked on the game. And one thing led to another. I ended up at Cornell and absolutely loved the experience. And again, being a left-handed pitcher, I think helped me up there. They didn't have too many of those. And I got the chance to throw some pretty good games there. And I wasn't good enough to be a pro ball player, but I never lost the love for the game. And when the pitch and teach in Cape Town, South Africa, I just took it, even though I knew nobody there, and it was a very long way from home. It was a risk worth taking, particularly for a 24-year-old kid with not much to lose.
I want to talk a little bit about once you've pitched the idea to Wrigley Gum Company. Then, and by the way, I should mention the audience. Wrigley owned the Chicago Cubs for some time, so there was always an association with baseball to one degree or another. But what an idea, an alternative to chewing tobacco. Did you have to? I guess I'm going to ask you some technical questions, somewhat. Things like copyright or patent. I mean, how did you protect it? One of the things you mentioned to me is nobody stole your idea.
I was really, again, lucky there. It was because I didn't make the Mavericks that I started the Little Maverick Baseball School. And as luck would have it, the father of one of the boys in the camp, the father of Scott Chernoff, the late, great Dan Chernoff, was a prominent patent and trademark attorney in Portland, and he happened to have gone to Cornell 10 years before I did. And we became friends at a Cornell Club of Portland function. I told him about the idea, and he helped me with all the intellectual property. He explained to me that I couldn't get a patent on shredded gum any more than anyone else could get a patent on chopped meat. But McDonald's could own Big Mac, the trademark, or Quarter Pounder, the trademark. And that's when he said, what do you want to call the brand? And I told him Big League Chew, and I told him about the ideas of the cartoon characters and what the pouch would look like and so forth. And he said, you have a wealth of material there. And so we pursued that. And again, the reason I was able to pursue that was because Jim Fountain was so magnanimous to put up $10,000 to do this. Now, bear in mind,